In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. There is a hadith quoted from Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, that Harith ibn Mughira, an Imam's Sadiq companion, said, "It was night, I was going somewhere, and I met Imam Sadiq, and he told me, if scholars do not share their knowledge, they're responsible for the sins unwise people commit." And he left, and I left as well. This was very heavy a statement for me, and I went back for Imam and I told him, "What you said was really heavy for me. What you said made me upset." Imam said, "Yes, you're right." Imam used some emphatic structures. What Imam said means scholars are responsible for the sins unwise men commit. And he underlined this issue that the scholars are responsible for the sins unwise men commit. Harith ibn Mughira thought that the scholars are only responsible for what they do. Hasn't Quran talked about this? Quran stated that people are responsible for the sins they commit. Should the scholars be responsible for the sins unwise men commit? Imam Sadiq said yes, for scholars are the cause. If unwise men commit sins, it is partly because of the scholars. For if scholars share their knowledge and if others use their knowledge, they would not commit sins. Scholars are responsible for the sins unwise commit. Of course, scholars might share their knowledge and not all unwise people might act upon it. Some might not act upon the scholar's knowledge, and then it would be a final word for them. So as a result, scholar does two things. He paves the way for those who are ready to be good and obey God, and there are some who would not obey God even if scholars share their knowledge. A scholar is not responsible for those who do not follow. But if a scholar does not share his knowledge and if they would like to follow, scholars are responsible for the sins people commit. Among the companions of Infallible, there were hundreds of companions who turned to be righteous by following what Infallibles advised them. And the companions themselves advised others and led many others to the right path because they were responsible for them. Scholars are responsible for this. By scholars, I do not mean sophisticated scholars. They could be any scholars. They might be scholars regarding beliefs, they might be scholars and experts about rulings, they might be experts at moralities, they might be experts at the history of prophets. What leads us to prosperity is learning and teaching to others. Learning knowledge is necessary for they have to guide others. Learning is necessary and teaching is necessary. Quran says, some have knowledge and do not act upon it, for they are stone-hearted, and they themselves are responsible for being stone-hearted, and the scholars are not responsible for this. And it is natural. Cruel rulers did not like these issues. They did not like the issues related to monotheism, justice, prophethood, imamat, hereafter, Islamic rulings and moralities. Infallibles had many problems like exile, imprisonment, torture, and they were mostly murdered for the sake of these issues. Imam's companions, people like Abu Zar, Salman, Ammar, Miqdad, had many hardships merely for the sake of this issue. Scholars are responsible for sharing their knowledge. They have to let others know what is right and what is wrong. And those scholars who did not share their knowledge are responsible for the sins unwise people commit. As Imam Sadiq said, they, in traditions, are considered as bad scholars. For being a scholar does not make someone good. A good scholar is the one who does his responsibility. And if a scholar does not do his responsibility, he is a bad scholar. Bad scholars did not share their knowledge, for they were ignorant, both responsible. Both a scholar and unwise people must learn and teach. But God first ordered the scholars to teach, and then He told the unwise to learn. Those who can learn, if the scholars do not teach them, if they commit sins, the scholars are responsible for that. As I said, by scholars I mean any scholars. The companions of infallibles were scholars in their own capabilities. They were not a complete scholar. The Harith ibn Mughira, who was a scholar in the time of Imam Sadiq, he was not an expert in all fields, but he was still responsible. A scholar must learn, and after that he must teach. And the unwise must learn, and after that they must teach. If they learn and they not act upon, they themselves are responsible. If they could have learned and they did not, they themselves are still responsible. And as Harith said, what you said was really heavy for me. A scholar is responsible for himself and others. Those who could be prosper, scholars are responsible for them. As learning knowledge is of great importance, being a scholar is a big responsibility. Ahlul Bayt tolerated many responsibilities and they were killed for that. It has been stated in traditions, 13 infallibles were killed one by one. It is also stated that Imam Mahdi will be killed when he emerges. Why they were killed, why they were exiled, why they were tortured, why they were put in prisons. If they had their knowledge, they wouldn't have to tolerate these hardships. The wrongdoers did not like them share their knowledge, so they stood against them. God gives us all the opportunity to learn and to teach. May God bless Muhammad and his descendants.
صلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.